I watched her leave, her smile barely hiding the tension in her eyes. She said it was just a meeting, but something in her voice didn't match the calm she tried to project. The minutes passed, and the weight of the silence grew heavier. I stood at the window, waiting, knowing that soon I'd have the truth in front of me. The traffic light turned red, and in that moment I saw it, her car, his presence beside her, the faintest glimpse that would change everything. But I wasn't ready to face it. Not yet. Everything would come to light soon enough. For now, I'll explain everything from the beginning. The day the envelope arrived was unremarkable. I was sorting through the usual stack of bills, flyers, and junk mail when I spotted it, an official-looking letter from the Department of Transportation. Assuming it was a routine notice, I tore it open without a second thought. Inside was a traffic violation ticket for running a red light, issued to my wife's car. At first I thought it must be a mistake. She was meticulous when it came to following rules, especially traffic laws. But as I unfolded the letter, a glossy black and white image slid out. It was a snapshot from the traffic camera, clear as day. There was her car, running the red light, with two people in the front seats. My heart sank as I studied the photo. The driver was unmistakably my wife, Claire. Her wavy brown hair was tied back in a way I recognized instantly. But it was the man in the passenger seat who caught my attention. He wasn't anyone I knew. His profile was sharp, his posture relaxed, as if he belonged there. I stared at the image, willing it to make sense. Who was he? Why was he in her car? And why hadn't she mentioned anything about this incident? My mind raced with possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. I flipped the letter over, searching for answers. The ticket had been issued 3 weeks ago, on a Wednesday afternoon. I tried to remember where I'd been that day. Work, probably. Claire had told me she was running errands. Nothing unusual. Setting the ticket aside, I picked up my phone and dialed her number. It rang twice before she answered. "Hey, love," she said, her voice warm and familiar. "What's up? Did you know you got a traffic ticket?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. There was a brief pause on the other end. "A traffic ticket? No, I didn't. What are you talking about?" "It's from 3 weeks ago," I said, glancing at the date again. "You ran a red light. There's a photo of your car." Another pause. This one longer. "Oh," she said finally. "That's strange. I don't remember running a red light." "Well, it happened," I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "And there's someone in the car with you. Do you know who it could be?" She hesitated. I could hear the faint rustle of papers in the background, as if she were trying to distract herself. "Oh, that must have been, oh, right. That was Kevin. From work. He needed a ride home that day because his car broke down." Her explanation sounded plausible, but something about her tone didn't sit right with me. It was too rehearsed, too quick. Claire was a terrible liar, and I had learned to spot the subtle tells in her voice over the years. "Kevin?" I repeated. "You've never mentioned him before." "Yeah, he's new," she said, her voice gaining a bit more confidence. "He's in marketing. I didn't think it was a big deal, so I didn't bring it up." I let her words hang in the air, debating whether to push further. But before I could, she added, "I'll pay the ticket, don't worry about it. Thanks for letting me know." She hung up before I could say anything else. I stared at the phone in my hand, a strange unease settling in my chest. Something didn't add up. Claire wasn't the type to give rides to strangers, let alone forget to mention it. And who was this Kevin? I picked up the photo again, scrutinizing the man's face. He didn't look like someone in need of a ride. He looked comfortable, familiar. Too familiar. For the rest of the day, I couldn't shake the image from my mind. It wasn't just the ticket or the man in the car, it was the way Claire had brushed it off, as if it were nothing. But to me, it felt like the beginning of something much bigger. Something I wasn't ready to face. As night fell and Claire came home, cheerful and chatty as usual, I watched her closely. Every word, every gesture seemed perfectly normal, Yet I couldn't stop the nagging doubt gnawing at the edges of my mind. Who was this man? And what was he doing in my wife's car? I didn't know it then, but the answer to that question would unravel everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and the woman I loved. I spent the next few days wrestling with a gnawing feeling that I couldn't quite shake. Every time I saw Claire, I was struck by a mix of suspicion and disbelief. She seemed completely unaware of the storm brewing in my mind, going about her day-to-day routine, as if nothing had changed. And in some ways, nothing had. On the surface, we were still the same couple we'd always been. But underneath, everything felt different. I knew I couldn't let this go. I had to confront her. But how? How do you confront someone you love, someone you've trusted for years, when your world starts to crumble and everything feels like a lie? I had to be careful, too careful. I couldn't afford to come off as accusatory or paranoid, but at the same time, I couldn't let her off the hook so easily. The tension built inside me, each moment with her becoming more strained, more suffocating. And then, on Thursday night, after dinner, when the dishes were done and the house settled into its usual calm, I decided it was time. "Claire, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady, but there was an undercurrent of something she couldn't ignore. She looked up from her phone, surprised but not alarmed. "Sure, what's going on?" I hesitated, the words hanging in my throat. This wasn't going to be easy, but I couldn't back down. I had to know the truth. "It's about the ticket. The one for running the red light." She blinked, a frown forming. "We're still talking about that? I told you, it was nothing. Kevin needed a ride." I nodded slowly, trying to keep my expression neutral. "Right. You said that. But something doesn't sit right with me." Claire raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a faint smile. "What do you mean?" I wasn't sure how to say it, so I just went for it. "You didn't mention Kevin before. And I've never seen him. Not once. So I did a little digging. I checked your calendar, your phone records, and I even asked around at work." Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly, her voice defensive. "Why would you do that? I thought you trusted me." "I do trust you," I said, but I couldn't keep the frustration out of my voice. "It's just, this whole thing feels off. You said he was from work, but I can't find anything about him. And the way you acted when I first mentioned the ticket, it was like you were trying to cover something up." Claire's eyes narrowed, her posture shifting slightly. "You're being ridiculous. I told you, Kevin's just a guy from work. You're overthinking this." I didn't back down. "You're telling me that you've been working with this guy for weeks, and I've never heard about him? Not once? And he just happens to need a ride that day? That doesn't add up, Claire." The silence between us thickened, the air charged with tension. Claire's gaze shifted away, and I could see her struggling to keep her composure. But I wasn't finished. "I also looked at the photo from the ticket. And I saw the way you two were sitting in the car. It wasn't just a casual ride, Claire. You looked comfortable. Too comfortable." Her lips pressed together, and I saw her hands tremble slightly. For a brief moment she didn't speak, her gaze locked on the floor. Then, with a sigh, she met my eyes again. "Okay, fine," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you." I felt a chill run down my spine. This was it. The truth was finally slipping out, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. But I had to know. "What do you mean? What's going on, Claire?" She bit her lip, her gaze darting away for a moment before she spoke again. "It's not just a ride. Kevin, he's been more than that. I've been seeing him for the past 2 months." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My chest tightened, and my breath caught in my throat. I had to sit down, my legs suddenly unsteady. The words she had just said didn't register at first. It was like my brain couldn't comprehend the weight of her confession. "You've been seeing him?" I finally managed to say, my voice shaky. "For 2 months?" Claire nodded, her face flushed with shame. "Yes. It started innocently enough. He's been helping me with my fitness goals, and we started spending more time together. But then, it just happened. I never meant for it to go this far, but it did. I'm so sorry. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't even process what she was saying. The words felt like they were coming from someone else, like I was listening to a stranger confessing a crime. But the truth was there, right in front of me. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built my life with, had betrayed me. You've been seeing him behind my back for 2 months. I repeated, my voice a hollow echo of the man I once was. And you thought I wouldn't find out? I didn't think it would go this far, Claire said, her voice cracking. I never meant for you to find out this way. I thought I could end it, but then the ticket happened and… I just didn't know how to explain it. The pain in her voice didn't reach me. It was as if I were hearing her through a fog, disconnected from the raw reality of her words. The man in the photo, the man in the passenger seat, was real. And my wife had been lying to me for weeks. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. How long has this been going on, Claire? How long have you been seeing him? 2 months, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. It started after we had that fight. You know, the one about the promotion. I don't know. I felt distant from you. Kevin was there, and he made me feel seen. I don't know what happened, but I never meant to hurt you. The words felt like a punch to the gut. A part of me wanted to scream, to lash out, to make her feel the pain I was feeling. But I stayed quiet, my mind reeling with the reality of her confession. I stood up, pacing the room, trying to process everything. The ticket. The lies. The affair. It was all too much to take in. I had trusted her. I had built my life around her, and now everything was shattered. I don't know what to say, Claire, I said, my voice hoarse. I don't know what to do with any of this. I'm sorry, she said, her eyes filled with tears. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know what happened. The silence between us grew heavy, suffocating. I didn't know what to say either. The words that had once been easy between us now felt foreign. I turned away from her, unable to look at her any longer. The truth was too much. The betrayal was too much. The days following my confrontation with Claire were filled with a quiet, unsettling tension. I had hoped that talking about the ticket might clear things up, but it only deepened the mystery. Claire had insisted that there was nothing to worry about, that Kevin from work was just a colleague who needed a ride. Her explanation had seemed so simple, so believable. Yet something inside me told me that there was more to the story than she was letting on. The next few days were a blur. I went to work, tried to act normal, but my mind kept circling back to the same question: what was really going on? I couldn't stop thinking about the man in the passenger seat of Claire's car. His presence, so casual, so confident, made me feel like an outsider in my own life. Who was he really? And why hadn't Claire mentioned him to me before? I needed answers. And I wasn't going to get them by sitting around and waiting for Claire to confess. The first step was simple. I needed to find out more about this Kevin. Claire had mentioned his name a few times during our brief conversation, but she hadn't gone into detail. I had no idea how long he'd been working with her, what their relationship was like, or why he needed rides in the first place. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how little I actually knew about this guy. That evening, after dinner, Claire was on the phone with a friend, chatting about something mundane. I saw this as my chance. I slipped into her office, the room she rarely used anymore. The computer sat on her desk, a quiet beacon of potential answers. I didn't feel guilty. I wasn't snooping out of malice, but out of necessity. If I didn't find something concrete, I would never have peace. I sat down at her desk and powered up the computer. Her password was simple enough to guess. She used the same one for everything. Once I was in, I opened her email inbox. At first, I was cautious, just scrolling through her recent messages. Most of them were work-related, exchanges with colleagues, project updates, and the occasional friendly note from her sister. But then I found something that stood out. A string of emails from someone named Kevin Matthews. They were dated back to the last few months, but what caught my attention was the tone of their exchanges. Casual. Friendly. Too friendly. Claire had written about a work project she was handling, but the way she spoke to Kevin was different. There was a level of intimacy that made me uncomfortable, even though there was nothing overtly inappropriate in the content of the emails. She signed off with phrases like, "Talk soon," and "Looking forward to our next meeting." And in one email, she'd included a smiley face at the end. It wasn't much, but it was enough to raise more questions. I couldn't help myself. I clicked on one of the more recent messages. It was about a work presentation they'd been collaborating on, but Kevin had asked if she was free for dinner after the meeting. The way Claire had responded, so nonchalantly, made me feel like an intruder. It wasn't that she had agreed to dinner, but that she'd responded at all, without hesitation. I felt a wave of nausea as I closed the email and logged out of her computer. I didn't need to see more. I had enough to go on. There was something off about this Kevin, and I was determined to find out what it was. The next morning, I decided to take a different approach. Instead of focusing on Claire's work emails, I started looking into her schedule. I knew her calendar was synced with my phone, and I had access to it. At first, I didn't expect to find anything suspicious. But when I scrolled through the entries, one stood out. It was from a few weeks ago, the same week the traffic ticket had been issued. There was a meeting scheduled for that Wednesday afternoon, a meeting that I knew was at least partially true. Claire had told me she had to meet with a client. But as I dug deeper, I saw that the meeting had been rescheduled several times, and the new time slot was suspiciously close to the moment the ticket had been issued. Could it be possible that she had lied to me about the client? That the meeting was a cover for something else? I wasn't sure yet, but the timing was too perfect to ignore. I started paying closer attention to Claire's habits. She had a tendency to leave her phone lying around when she went to the kitchen or bathroom. At first, I tried to avoid snooping. But the temptation was too great. Each time I saw her phone sitting unattended, I couldn't resist. I checked her messages first. There were plenty of conversations with friends and family, but as I scrolled further, I saw something that made my stomach turn. It was a text exchange with Kevin. The conversation was innocent enough at first, talking about work, confirming the details of a meeting. But then, near the end, I saw something that made my blood run cold. "I can't stop thinking about you," Kevin had written. The words were simple, but the weight of them was suffocating. I felt a knot form in my chest as I read Claire's response. "I've been thinking about you too. It's getting harder to pretend." I froze. Harder to pretend? What did that mean? The implications were clear, and they hit me like a punch to the gut. Claire wasn't just having casual interactions with Kevin, there was something more going on. Something deeper. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the screen, my mind racing. How had I not seen this before? How had I missed the signs? The whole time, Claire had been hiding this affair right under my nose. But I wasn't done yet. I needed more proof. I had to confirm what I already suspected. I decided to go to Claire's gym. She had mentioned going there a few times, but I hadn't really thought much of it. If she and Kevin were seeing each other, it would make sense that they'd spend time together outside of work. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to find, but I needed answers. When I arrived at the gym, I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe I'd catch them together, maybe I wouldn't. But as I stood in the lobby, waiting for Claire's workout to end, I saw Kevin walk in. He was tall, athletic, with short, dark hair. He had a confident stride, as if he belonged there. I tried to keep my distance, not wanting to draw attention to myself, but I couldn't help watching him. After a few minutes, I saw Claire come out of the back area, her hair pulled into a tight ponytail, a towel draped over her shoulder. She spotted Kevin and walked toward him, smiling. I didn't need to see more. I turned on my heel and left the gym, my heart pounding in my chest. The evidence was mounting, and it was undeniable now. Claire was having an affair. The following days were an exhausting blur. My mind was overwhelmed with what I had uncovered: emails, texts, and the undeniable presence of Kevin in Claire's life. The picture was becoming clearer with each passing moment, but I still hadn't found the final piece of the puzzle. I needed something concrete, something that would leave no room for denial. I couldn't let this slip away without full confirmation. I had to confront her again, but this time, it had to be different. Claire was away on a business trip for a couple of days, which gave me the perfect opportunity to do one last round of digging. I knew I had to be careful. If she found out what I was doing, she would shut down completely. I needed to stay calm, stay methodical. As soon as Claire left, I went straight to the garage. It had always been one of her favorite places to keep things organized, from old boxes of seasonal decorations to forgotten gym equipment. But this time, I wasn't looking for any of that. I was looking for something specific: her car. The traffic ticket that had started this whole mess was still fresh in my mind. The car had run a red light, and Kevin had been sitting in the passenger seat. The photo from the camera had shown them both so relaxed, so at ease. But what was it that Claire had told me? That she was just giving him a ride? Something about that never added up. I stood in the garage, staring at the car. It looked normal, as it always had, clean, well-maintained, and nothing out of the ordinary. But my eyes kept darting to the passenger seat, imagining the exact moment the traffic camera had snapped the photo. Kevin had been there, beside her. How many times had they been in this car together? How many secrets had it held? I walked around the car, checking every corner. Nothing. I moved to the back seat and checked under the seats. Nothing there either. But as I opened the glove compartment, I felt a flicker of hope. I pulled out the small stack of papers that had been shoved inside. Mostly receipts and random documents, but as I shuffled through them, one thing caught my eye. A parking ticket. It was recent, just a few days before the red light incident. The ticket had been issued in a part of town I didn't recognize, a place I knew Claire had never mentioned. I read the details. It was for an illegal parking violation, but the thing that struck me was the location. The street was near a neighborhood I'd never heard of before. I felt a jolt of realization. Why would she be parking here? I knew I had to follow up. I couldn't let this go. If she was lying about where she'd been, then it only added to the growing list of reasons to question everything she told me. I didn't waste any time. I grabbed my keys and headed straight to the location on the ticket. The drive was short, but the neighborhood felt unfamiliar. It wasn't far from the city, but it was the kind of place I wouldn't have expected Claire to visit. The houses were large and well-kept, the streets quiet, with manicured lawns. It looked like a place for professionals, for people who wanted to escape the hustle of the city but still be close enough to everything. I parked down the street, a few houses away from the address listed on the ticket. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew I had to be discreet. I got out of the car and started walking, trying to keep a low profile. As I passed the house on the ticket, I looked at the number on the mailbox. It matched. I felt my heart rate increase as I approached the front door. There was no sign of movement, no indication that anyone was home. But something about the house felt off. It was too quiet, too perfect. I lingered for a few more moments, then turned to leave, when I heard a voice. "Can I help you?" I froze. A man was standing at the end of the driveway, looking at me with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. He was older, in his late 40s, with graying hair and a well-kept suit. He didn't look like the kind of person I would expect Claire to know. But then again, what kind of person had she been spending time with? I turned to face him, trying to keep my expression neutral. "Sorry, I was just looking for someone. I think I've got the wrong house." He didn't seem convinced, but he didn't push it. "Well, if you're looking for someone, I'd suggest checking the next block over. This is a private residence." I nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "Thanks. Sorry for the confusion." I turned quickly, walking back to my car. My mind was racing. Who was that man? Was he connected to Claire? Was this where she'd been going, when she said she was working late, or meeting a client? I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that this house had something to do with Kevin. There was no other explanation for the ticket, for Claire's strange behavior. It all pointed back to him. I had to find out more. The next morning, I woke up early, my mind already racing. Claire would be home soon, and I needed to figure out my next move. I decided to call the number on the parking ticket. The address on the ticket led to a property management company, and I knew they would have records of who owned the house. I wasn't sure if they would give me the information, but I had to try. After a few rings, a woman picked up. "Hello, this is Greenfield Properties. How can I help you?" I kept my voice calm, trying to sound like just another person asking about a property. "Hi, I'm looking for information on a property located at 426 Ashford Drive. Could you tell me who owns it?" There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "Sorry, I can't release that information without proper authorization. Can I take a message for you?" I could feel the frustration building. "I'm not looking for anything personal, just wondering if you could confirm if the house is being rented or sold." "Sorry, I can't disclose that information. You'll need to contact the owner directly for that." I felt my frustration growing. "I understand. Thanks for your time." I hung up, my heart pounding. The woman hadn't given me anything useful. But the fact that she couldn't release the information only made me more certain that something was off. The pieces were all falling into place, but I still didn't have the one thing I needed, the final confirmation. I had to confront Claire again. But this time, it wasn't just about asking questions. This time, I had to lay everything out and make her admit the truth. The lies, the secrets, and the affair. It was all coming to a head, and I wasn't going to back down. I knew that the time had come. I had pieced together the truth. Everything pointed to Claire's affair with Kevin, but I still hadn't gotten her to admit it. My mind was consumed with the evidence I had gathered, from the traffic ticket to the mysterious parking ticket, the texts, and the visits to places she'd never mentioned. The puzzle was complete, but the final confrontation still loomed. I had to face her, and I had to do it with everything I knew. There was no turning back now. Claire was due back from her business trip in the late afternoon. I spent the entire morning pacing around the house, waiting for her to return. I had to be calm, collected, and precise in what I said. There was no room for emotion, not yet at least. I couldn't afford to show her the depth of my hurt, the betrayal that was eating away at me. I tried to distract myself, but my thoughts kept circling back to the house on Ashford Drive. I couldn't shake the image of that man standing in the driveway, the way he had looked at me as though he knew exactly what I was doing there. It was a gut feeling, but it felt right. Everything about that moment had confirmed my suspicions. There was something happening behind my back, something I couldn't ignore any longer. Finally, the sound of the front door opening broke through my thoughts. Claire was home. I stood up, taking a deep breath as I walked toward the living room. She entered, dragging her suitcase behind her, her face lighting up as she saw me. "Hey, babe! I'm back," she said, her voice warm, her smile genuine. I didn't return the smile. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at her, watching the way she stood there, looking so carefree, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I had seen through the facade. Claire set her suitcase down and walked toward me, clearly expecting a hug or at least some acknowledgement of her return. But I stepped back, holding up a hand to stop her. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but cold. Her smile faltered for a second, and her eyes flickered with confusion. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. But I could see the edge in her eyes, the hesitation, the guilt she was trying so hard to hide. "Sit down," I told her. She hesitated, but eventually she complied, sitting on the couch across from me. The tension in the room was palpable. I didn't waste any time. "I know about Kevin," I said, my voice calm, but every word felt like a strike. Her face went pale. Her mouth opened, but no words came out at first. I watched her, waiting for her to say something, anything. But she just sat there, stunned. I didn't give her the chance to gather herself. I know about the emails, the texts, the meetings, the parking tickets. And I know about Ashford Drive. I continued, watching her face as the color drained from it. I know you've been lying to me, Claire. She swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, but there was no conviction in her voice. It was clear that the facade was starting to crack. You don't know what I'm talking about? I repeated, my voice low and measured. You think I haven't been paying attention? You think I haven't noticed how distant you've become, how you've been sneaking around behind my back? You think I wouldn't figure it out? Claire's eyes welled up with tears, but I wasn't ready to let her off the hook. I had been patient, but I couldn't hold back anymore. I was done with the lies, done with pretending that everything was fine. You've been seeing him, haven't you? I asked, my voice cutting through the silence. Claire's shoulders trembled, and she finally looked me in the eye. There was no point in hiding it anymore. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. Yes, she whispered. I've been seeing Kevin. I felt a rush of cold wash over me, the words hanging in the air like a heavy weight. It wasn't a shock, no, I had suspected it for a while, but hearing her say it out loud was a different kind of pain. It was confirmation. Why? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why him? What did I do wrong? Was I not enough? Claire shook her head, her face crumpling with guilt. No, it's not you. It's never been you. She stopped herself, as if unsure how to explain. I don't know. It just happened. Kevin, he's different. I never meant for it to go this far, but I couldn't stop it. The words hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't stop it. It was as if she was admitting that she had no control over her actions, no remorse for the pain she was causing me. And that hurt more than anything else. You couldn't stop it? I repeated, the disbelief creeping into my voice. You couldn't stop it, Claire? You didn't think about me? About what we had? About the life we built together? She was silent for a long moment, her face contorted with regret. But she didn't apologize, not in the way I needed her to. I'm sorry, she said softly, but it's too late now. I can't undo what I've done. I sat there, staring at her, feeling like a stranger in my own home. She had betrayed me, not just once, but repeatedly. She had lied, deceived, and hurt me in ways I couldn't even begin to comprehend. And now, here she was, offering me a half-hearted apology as if that could somehow make it all better. I want you to leave, I said, the words coming out more easily than I expected. I want you to leave, Claire. Now. Her eyes widened in shock, but there was no mistaking the finality in my voice. She stood up slowly, wiping away the tears. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, I said, my voice cold. Just leave. Claire hesitated for a moment longer, then nodded, turning away without another word. She grabbed her things, and I didn't look back. The sound of the door closing behind her was the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. And as I stood there, alone in the house we had shared for years, I realized that the betrayal wasn't just about her affair. It was about the lies, the secrets, and the years of my life that I would never get back. The days after Claire left were some of the most surreal of my life. The house, once filled with the noise of everyday life, now felt like a hollow shell. The silence was deafening. I couldn't escape the memories of everything we had been through, of the life I had thought we shared. But there was no turning back. Claire was gone, and the weight of her betrayal still hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I spent the first few days just trying to process everything. I couldn't believe how easily she had thrown everything away, our marriage, our trust, our future. But as the shock began to wear off, something else started to take root, a quiet resolve. I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to let her mistakes break me. I packed up her things and cleared out the closet. It felt cathartic in a way. I didn't need any reminders of her, of the lies she had spun. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way I had been during the confrontation. Now I just felt numb. Empty. But that numbness was better than the rage I had felt when I first discovered the truth. I started to focus on myself again. I hadn't done that in years. My friends called, offering support, but I didn't need pity. What I needed was time. Time to rebuild. Time to find out who I was without Claire by my side. It wasn't easy, but little by little, I began to reclaim my life. The first step was clearing out the emotional clutter. I started going to the gym again, something I hadn't done in months. I cooked meals for myself, simple, satisfying meals that didn't remind me of the times Claire and I had spent together. Slowly, the fog began to lift. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when I still caught myself looking for her, waiting for her to come home, but they grew less frequent. The memories began to fade, replaced by new routines and new experiences. And as time went on, I realized that I didn't need her anymore. I didn't need the lies, the betrayal, the hurt. What I needed was the freedom to move forward. To let go of the past and build something new. Something real. I wasn't broken. I wasn't a victim. I was just a man who had been hurt, but who had the strength to rise above it. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Leave a comment with your thoughts on the story. And subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new interesting stories. See you soon.